Listen, Judge, if he's dying anyway, why should I pay for his problems? Those were the words that hit my courtroom like a slap. I was sitting in Providence Municipal Court, right where I've sat for years, watching people walk in with fear, hope, or sometimes pride. But that day, I heard a sentence so cold, it made the air feel thinner. The man who said it was 34 years old. His name was Dax Hollis. He looked like he stepped out of a glossy magazine, clean haircut, sharp jaw, a silver watch that could pay someone's rent for a year. He wore a black designer suit that fit him like it was painted on. He didn't just walk, he glided, like the whole building belonged to him. His eyes didn't look at me like I was the judge. They looked at me like I was a slow cashier holding up his line. And the person he was talking about, the one he called dying anyway, was sitting 3 rows back, holding a worn folder against his chest like it was the last thing keeping him together. My hand stayed calm on the bench, but inside me something tightened. If you believe justice should be equal for everyone, you'll want to see what happens next. The bailiff's voice cut through the quiet. Case 2026 TR 41827, State of Rhode Island versus Dax Hollis. I looked down at the papers, a traffic case at first glance, but I've learned something in this job. Sometimes the smallest cases carry the biggest truths. Good morning, I said, keeping my voice steady. Mr. Hollis, step forward. He did, slow and confident, like time was his employee too. Good morning, Judge, he said, not rude in the words, rude in the tone, like he was forced to greet a stranger. I glanced at the file again. You're here for a citation related to unsafe lane change and failure to yield. This happened on a rainy night near the Point Street Bridge. He shrugged. Sure, I guess. I lifted my eyes to him. You guess? He smiled like it was funny. My driver usually handles all this, but he said court would be a good look. So here I am. I heard a few soft murmurs from the gallery, not loud, just that sound people make when they see someone acting too big for the room. I leaned forward a little. This is a court of law, Mr. Hollis, not a photo shoot. His smile stayed, but his eyes sharpened. Understood. Then I looked back toward the victim. He stood when I nodded to him, and I noticed how carefully he moved, like his body was a glass cup with cracks in it. His name was Eli Mercer, 46 years old, a facilities worker at a small tech building downtown, the kind of job where you fix what others break and get blamed when it's not perfect. His uniform shirt was clean but faded, like it had been washed 1,000 times. His hands looked rough, his face looked tired, not worked late, tired. More like life has been heavy for years, tired. He kept one hand near his side, close to his ribs, as if breathing hurt. Mr. Mercer, I said gently, you're here today because you requested to speak. Tell me why. Eli swallowed. His voice was quiet at first. I was walking to the bus stop. It was raining hard. A car swung across the lane fast. I jumped back, but I slipped. He paused and cleared his throat. I fell into the curb. My side hit. I couldn't breathe right. The car didn't stop. I got the plate number from a store camera later. It was his. He pointed, but not with anger. More like he couldn't believe it was real. Dax let out a short laugh. That's what this is? He tripped? Eli's cheeks flushed, but he didn't fight back. I looked at Dax. Mr. Hollis, do not interrupt. He raised his hands like I was being dramatic. Okay, I'm just saying, I didn't hit him. He's acting like I ran him over. Eli gripped his folder tighter. I didn't say you hit me. I said you caused it and left. Dax turned his head and looked Eli up and down. And you want what? A handout? That was the first disrespect moment. Quick, sharp, like a knife flick. I kept my tone calm. Mr. Hollis, you're not here to insult anyone. You're here to answer for your driving and your actions afterward. Dax nodded, but his eyes rolled slightly. Behind him I saw the victim's wife, Marla, sitting on the end of the row. Her hair was pulled back tight. She had a cheap tote bag at her feet and both hands clasped like she was praying without words. Next to her sat a teenage girl, maybe 15, thin and pale with wide eyes. Their daughter, I later learned. Name, Tessa. I have seen many families in my courtroom. I know the look of a family that is one surprise away from falling apart. I took a breath. Mr. Mercer, you said you're struggling. Explain that to me. Eli nodded slowly. I got sick last year, pancreatic cancer. He said it plain, like he had repeated it so many times it stopped sounding real. I heard the gallery shift, a quiet ripple. Eli went on. I was still working. I didn't want to stop. We need the money, the treatments. They cost a lot, even with insurance. Marla wiped her eyes fast, like she didn't want anyone to see. Eli's voice shook. That night, the fall messed up my ribs. I had to go to the ER. I missed days of work. Then I got fired. Dax leaned on the podium like he was bored. Not my fault. I lifted my hand. Mr. Mercer, who fired you? Eli looked down. His company did, Hollis Vertex. The building I worked in was one of their sites. Now I felt the room change. This wasn't just a traffic ticket. This was power. Dax smiled again, like he enjoyed the attention. I run a fast company, Judge. We can't have sick people slowing things down. The gallery made a low sound. One woman whispered, "Oh my God." I stayed calm, but I watched him closely. Mr. Hollis, are you saying you fired this man after the incident? Dax shrugged. He missed work. That's how jobs work. Eli looked up and his eyes finally showed anger. I had a doctor note. I begged HR. I told them I was in treatment. Then I got an email that said my services were no longer needed. He opened his folder with shaking hands. That was when the escalation began. Dax's first minor disrespect came quick. He leaned toward Eli and said, "Maybe if you didn't spend your life mopping floors, you'd have savings." The words weren't shouted, but they landed like a shove. I said, "Mr. Hollis, one more comment like that, and you will regret it." He smirked. "It's just facts." I held his gaze. Facts are things we can prove. Insults are things we choose. Choose carefully. Eli pulled out a printed email. I brought the termination email. That was evidence number 1. He handed it to the clerk. The clerk brought it to me. I read it slowly. It had the company logo at the top. Hollis Vertex. Clean, modern. The kind of logo that looks like it was made to hide sharp edges. The email said, "Due to performance and attendance concerns, your employment is terminated effective immediately." I looked at the date, 2 days after the fall. I looked up. "Mr. Hollis, did you personally approve this firing?" Dax's mouth twitched. "I don't approve every firing. That's beneath me." Beneath me. I repeated it in my head, not out loud yet. Eli said, "But I got a second email from him." He pulled out another paper. His fingers trembled so hard, the page fluttered like a small flag in a storm. I nodded for the clerk. Evidence number 2. It was a screenshot of a message sent from a company email address, dax@hollisvertex.com. I read it. My stomach sank. It said, "Eli, we build winners here. I can't carry dead weight. Get your things. Don't reply." The word dead sat there, cold and cruel. Dax shifted, and for the first time his confidence cracked a little. That's taken out of context." I looked up. "What context makes that acceptable?" He snapped back fast. "Context is I'm busy. I don't have time to write poetry to every worker." Then he tried the next step, the authority challenge. He squared his shoulders and said, "Judge, I'm going to be honest. I'm a big taxpayer in this city. I fund programs. I donate to schools. I know people. This is a waste of court time." He said it like a warning. I've heard people try to buy respect before, but it always surprises me when they do it out loud. I kept my voice steady. "Mr. Hollis, in this courtroom, your money has no vote." He laughed once, sharp. "Come on, you know that's not how the world works." "Maybe not outside," I said, "but in Providence Municipal Court, that is exactly how it works." He leaned closer. I could call the mayor right now. I paused, then I said, "You can call whoever you want after court. Right now you're standing in front of me." The gallery got quiet again. I could feel eyes on me, waiting to see if I would bend. I did not bend. Then the third confrontation came, the line cross. Dax turned his head toward Eli and said, loud enough for everyone, "Let's be real. He's sick. He's probably not even going to make it. Why should I pay for his last few months?" Eli's wife let out a sound. Not a word, just pain. Tessa, their daughter, covered her mouth with both hands. Her shoulders shook. Eli stood still, but his eyes filled fast, like a cup being poured too full. I felt my face change. I didn't plan it. It just happened. My jaw tightened. My eyes narrowed. "Mr. Hollis," I said slowly, "do you understand what you just said?" He lifted his chin. "I said the truth. Everyone's thinking it." That was when I signaled the prosecutor. "What else do we have?" The prosecutor stood and said, "Your Honor, we have a dashcam clip from a rideshare driver behind the defendant's vehicle. We also have a receipt and timestamp from a valet service showing the defendant left the area without stopping, even though he had time." Evidence number 3. A video. The clerk played it on the screen. I watched the rainy street, headlights blurred in the wet air. Dax's car, a bright matte gray supercar, cut across lanes fast. A figure on the sidewalk, Eli, stepped back, slipped, and slammed into the curb. Then the supercar slowed for half a second, like it considered stopping. Then it sped away. The video had no sound, but it didn't need sound. The next image was a valet receipt with a timestamp, 9:14 p.m., a nearby luxury garage. The car had been parked minutes after the fall, meaning he didn't rush to a hospital. He didn't rush to help. He rushed to protect his night. Dax shook his head, like the video was annoying, not shameful. "I didn't know he fell that hard." I leaned forward. "You saw him slip?" "No," he said quickly. "I saw a blur. It was raining." I pointed gently at the screen. "You slowed down," he snapped, "because I didn't want to scratch my car." That sentence hung in the air, and then came the viral moment. Dax looked around at the gallery, at Eli's wife, at their daughter, and then back at me. He smiled, and he delivered the nuclear quote like he was proud. "Judge, I'm a billionaire. People like him are replaceable. If he dies, he dies. The world keeps spinning, and my company keeps winning." 10 seconds of silence followed. No coughs, no whispers, no shuffling feet, just shock. Then the gallery erupted. A woman gasped loud. Someone said, "That's evil." Another voice cracked, "He's a human being." Marla started crying openly now, like she couldn't hold it back anymore. Tessa's face turned red, and tears streamed down. She stared at Dax like she had just watched a monster step out of a storybook and into real life. I felt my own throat tighten. I have heard a lot in my years. But something about hearing a man say, "replaceable," while the person he was talking about stood there fighting cancer. It did something to me. My face changed, and I knew everyone saw it. I let the noise settle. I raised my hand once. Silence returned, but it was a different silence now. It was heavy. It had weight. I looked straight at him. "Mr. Hollis," I said, "you're going to listen to me now." I stood a little in my chair, not to threaten, but to make sure my words reached every corner of the room. "I want you to say his name," I said. "Not him, not people like him. Say his name." Dax blinked. "What?" "Say it," I repeated. "Eli Mercer. Say it." He hesitated, then said, "Eli Mercer." I nodded. "Good. Now say this. Eli Mercer is a human being." He scoffed. "Judge," I cut in, calm but firm. "Mr. Hollis, Dax Hollis. I'm not asking for a speech. I'm asking if you still know the difference between a person and a product." His eyes hardened. "Fine. He's a human being." I leaned in. "You said, if he dies, he dies. You said, replaceable. You said, my company keeps winning." I paused and let the words sink in. "Let me ask you something, Dax Hollis. When did you learn to talk like that? Who taught you that a man's life is a speed bump on the road to your dinner plans?" Dax opened his mouth. Then shut it. I continued. You're 34. You're rich. You're powerful. But I have to tell you something simple. I tapped the bench lightly. In my courtroom, you are not a billionaire. You are a defendant. I looked toward Eli. That man has been working while his body is fighting a disease that steals strength like a thief in the night. He shows up anyway. He tries anyway. Then I looked back at Dax. And you? You couldn't even stop your car. You couldn't even stop your words. I let my voice soften because sometimes softness carries more force than yelling. Dax Hollis, do you know what dignity is? Dignity is what Eli Mercer carries when he stands here, weak, scared, and still respectful. I pointed gently at Dax's suit. And do you know what your suit is? It's cloth. It's expensive cloth. But it cannot cover a lack of character. The room was so quiet, I could hear the faint buzz of the lights. I went on. You tried to name drop. You tried to talk about the mayor. You tried to use money like it was a key to unlock this court. I shook my head. Money is not a key here. Respect is. I asked him hard questions. Did you ever work a job where missing a week could mean no rent? He didn't answer. Did you ever sit in a hospital room and wonder how your family will eat? He stared forward, jaw tight. Did you ever look at your child and feel afraid because you don't know how long you have left? I glanced at Tessa. She was shaking. I turned back. You called him dead weight. You wrote that word. Dead. Like he was trash. I held up the printed email. These are your words, Dax Hollis. Not rumors, not gossip. Your words. I paused. And here is the truth. In life, we will all be weak at some point. We will all need mercy at some point. If you forget that, you don't become strong. You become cruel. Dax's eyes flickered. For a split second, I saw something. Maybe shame, maybe fear. But he still didn't speak. So I finished my reckoning. I'm not here to destroy you, I said. I'm here to teach you what your money has hidden from you. People are not replaceable, I said. Not in a factory, not in a family, not in a courtroom. Then I sat back. Now we talk about consequences. I began sentencing in stages because I wanted each part to land. Mr. Hollis, for the unsafe lane change and failure to yield, the base financial penalty is $750. He opened his mouth like he wanted to laugh. I raised a finger. That's not the end. Because your actions caused injury, I'm ordering restitution. Restitution means you repay the cost you helped create. I looked at Eli's papers, hospital bill, lost wages, and a letter from his doctor confirming the rib injury made treatment harder. Restitution will be $18,450. That covers the emergency visit, follow-up care, and documented lost wages. Dax snapped, That's nothing to me. I nodded slowly. I know. That's why money alone won't fix this. I continued, Your license will be suspended for 90 days. He stiffened. I have meetings. I travel. I said, You will travel with a driver, like many people do, or you will stay home. That is not my problem. I added conditions. After the 90 days, you will be on a 1-year driving probation. One more moving violation in that year, and the suspension becomes 6 months. No exceptions. Then I moved to community service, and I made it tied directly to what he did. Community service, 240 hours. He blinked. What? 240, I repeated. You will complete it in 12 weeks. That is 20 hours a week. I watched his face. You will serve at the Providence Hope Clinic Outreach Program, I said, helping patients who are doing chemo. Chemo is a treatment that fights cancer, but it also makes people very tired and sick. He looked disgusted. That's not safe. I said, You will not touch needles. You will not do medical tasks. You will do human tasks. Here is your schedule, I continued. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., you will assist with cleaning common areas, setting up chairs, and walking patients to rides. Every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., you will help deliver meals to patients who cannot cook. I let it sit. And you will do it in plain clothes. I said. No cameras, no social posts, no turning suffering into your brand. I added, supervision. You will report weekly to a court service officer. You will submit signed logs. The clinic supervisor will send me a report every 2 weeks. Then I addressed the public accountability. You will write a handwritten apology, I said, to Eli Mercer and his family, not typed, handwritten, so you feel every word as you write it. Dax's lips pressed into a thin line. And you will record a 60-second PSA, I said, a public service announcement. That means a short message for the public. You will speak to high school seniors at One Providence Public School about respect, about responsibility, and about what happens when you treat people like objects. He scoffed. This is ridiculous. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. It's not ridiculous, I said. It's repair. Then I addressed his courtroom behavior. Finally, I said, your words in this courtroom were not just rude. They were a direct insult to the dignity of another human being and to this court. I paused. I find you in contempt. Contempt means you disobey or disrespect the court in a serious way. The room froze. Dax's eyes widened. You can't be serious. I nodded to the bailiff. The bailiff stepped forward. I watched the handcuffs come out. The metal caught the light. Dax's voice rose. You're doing this for show. I said, no, Mr. Hollis, I'm doing this for truth. The cuffs clicked around his wrists. The gallery didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just watched, like they were finally seeing the world balance itself for a moment. I spoke clearly. Mr. Hollis will be held for 48 hours. Then he will return here for a review hearing on February 5th, 2026. Dax's face went pale. 48 hours? That's insane. I said, what's insane is thinking people are replaceable. As the bailiff led him away, Dax twisted his head toward Eli and hissed, this isn't over. Eli didn't respond. He just stood there, breathing carefully, holding his folder like it was heavier than paper. After the sentencing, I looked at Eli and his family. Mr. Mercer, I said softly, I can't undo your illness. I can't erase your pain, but I can make sure this court does not ignore it. Eli nodded, eyes wet. Thank you, Judge. Marla gripped his arm. Thank you, she whispered, like her voice might break if she spoke louder. Tessa stared at the door where Dax had been taken. Then she looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes. Not joy, not revenge, just relief. Like someone finally said, you matter. Weeks passed. Some people think court ends when the gavel falls, but for me, the real ending is what someone does after they leave my courtroom. 12 weeks later, I saw Dax Hollis again. He walked in slower this time. No glossy smile. No designer suit. He wore a plain gray sweater and simple pants. His watch was gone. He stood at the podium, and he didn't look around like the room was beneath him. He looked down like he was trying to find the right words. I asked, Mr. Hollis, did you complete your service? He nodded. Yes, Judge. The court officer handed me a thick packet, signed logs, supervisor notes, times, dates. Then I read a letter from the clinic supervisor. It said, Mr. Hollis arrived on time. He did not ask for special treatment. He helped patients with kindness. He stayed late when rides were delayed. He listened. I looked up at him. Is that true? His voice was quieter than before. Yes. I asked, why? He swallowed. Because I met people. I met a man who used to build houses. He can't lift a hammer now. I met a mother who hides in the bathroom to cry so her kids don't see. He stopped. His eyes got glossy, and he looked embarrassed by it. I didn't know, he said. I leaned forward. You didn't know what? He said. I didn't know how heavy life can be for someone else. I nodded, because that was the first honest thing I had heard from him. Then he turned slightly, and I saw Eli Mercer sitting with his family again. Eli looked thinner, but he was there, still fighting. Dax faced them and held out an envelope. My apology, he said, handwritten. Eli took it with slow hands. Marla held Tessa close. Dax looked back at me. Judge, I can't take back what I said. I replied, no, you can't. He whispered, but I don't want to be that person. I held his gaze. Then don't be. When court ended that day, I stayed at my bench for a moment after the room cleared. I thought about the power people chase: money, fame, control. Those things can build tall towers, but they don't build a heart. In my courtroom, I see the best and worst of people, and I've learned one simple truth. A person's worth is not measured by their bank account. It's measured by how they treat someone who can do nothing for them. Justice is not just punishment, it is a reminder that dignity belongs to everyone. And if someone ever forgets that, I will be here in Providence Municipal Court, ready to remind them. Because the world does not need more winners who crush people, it needs more humans who lift them. My final line is this: no one is replaceable when you choose to see them as a soul.